The crystal tumbler of single malt scotch shattered on the flagstone patio the second my grandson screamed. Leo's mother, Celia, was seizing on the ground beside the fire pit, her limbs jerking violently, a thin line of saliva tracing her jaw. And all I could think was, interesting. The wrong guest is dying at my anniversary party. If you're watching this, hit subscribe. Before I explain how we got here, understand this. I'm Arthur Vance, 72 years old. I didn't build a real estate empire spanning 3 states by being a fool. When someone tries to erase you from your own legacy celebration, you pay attention, especially when that someone has been circling your assets like a vulture, waiting for the last breath. 2 hours earlier, my coastal estate had been the picture of curated celebration. 40 years since I founded Vance Properties. The sale of the commercial arm was final, netting just over $31 million. My son, Richard, had been insistent on the gathering. "Dad, it's a milestone," he'd said, his hand on my shoulder, the picture of filial pride. "Let Leo and Celia take care of everything. You've done enough." I should have been wary when my daughter-in-law, Celia, a woman whose idea of cooking was dialing a number, became a whirlwind of domesticity. She was coordinating caterers, directing the string quartet, and fussing over the placement of every hydrangea. The party was flawless. 50 people, former rivals turned respectful colleagues. A few old friends, family. Celia had even imported a sushi chef from the city. "Only the best for you, Arthur," she'd simpered, her smile not quite reaching her cold hazel eyes. I was reminiscing with my first ever foreman when I saw the tell. Leo, my only son, lingering by the vintage whiskey cart. He glanced left, then right, his body a shield against the crowd. From his blazer pocket, he withdrew not a flask, but a small amber glass bottle. My breath caught as I watched him tip it over a specific glass, the heavy, cut crystal lowball with the faint scar on its base. My glass, the one I'd used for 20 years. A rational man might have shouted, might have stormed over and gripped his son by the collar. But I've learned that to truly understand a plot, you must first let the actors believe the stage is theirs. So I chuckled at my foreman's joke, nodded along, and watched. Leo picked up the poisoned scotch and wove through the crowd toward me, his face a mask of affectionate concern. "Dad, you look pale," he said, pressing the cool glass into my hand. "Here, the Macallan 30. You always said it was for a special occasion." I took it. I thanked him. I swirled the amber liquid, watching the firelight dance in it. And I waited. 10 minutes later, as Leo was loudly explaining the architectural merits of my home to a captive audience, my home, I saw Celia's mother, Judith, looking parched and slightly bored near the terrace doors. Judith was always a social magpie, flitting from group to group, drink in hand. Currently her hand was empty. "Judith, you look stranded," I said, smoothly taking the tainted glass from my own hand and placing it on the table next to her clutch. "The waitstaff are overwhelmed. Help yourself." "Oh, Arthur, you're a saint," she trilled, absently grabbing the nearest drink, my drink, and taking a long, grateful sip. Robust. Is this the cask strength? The rest, as they say, was a swift, brutal descent into chaos. I was kneeling on the flagstones, cradling Judith's head, when the screams started. Leo's performance was Oscar-worthy, a son horrified at a family tragedy unfolding in his father's home. Almost convincing. Almost. The difference between real terror and staged panic is in the eyes. His kept darting to me, checking for a reaction. What in God's name happened? Richard, my brother, boomed, pushing through the gathering crowd. His face was ashen, but I saw it. A flicker of communication, a micro glance exchanged with Leo. A shared, silent question. "Why is she on the ground?" "I don't know," Leo cried, clutching at his father's arm. "Nana Judith just collapsed." The paramedics were swift. As they loaded a now unconscious Judith onto a gurney, I studied my son. 35 years of fatherhood had taught me his rhythms. The tightness around his mouth, the barely controlled tremor in his hands. This wasn't just shock. This was a plan unraveling in real time. "Which hospital?" I asked the lead EMT. "Mercy General. Are you family?" "Closer than family," I said, my gaze landing pointedly on Celia, who was sobbing into a linen napkin. "I'll follow." Leo sprang forward. "Dad, no, you're shaken. Go inside. We'll handle this, please." How thoughtful. Keep the intended corpse at home, away from the medical evidence. "Nonsense," I said, my voice leaving no room for argument. "Judith is my guest, my responsibility." I grabbed my keys from the hall table, leaving behind the echoes of a party that had just turned fatal. At Mercy General, the fluorescent lights hummed a sterile dirge. I positioned myself as a distraught family elder, close enough to catch the doctor's hushed updates. Acute cardiac event, possible toxin-induced, running panels for specific alkaloids, digoxin-like substances. Digoxin, derived from foxglove. Untraceable in standard autopsies if the dose is clever. Someone had done their botanical homework. In the waiting room, Celia's designer heels tapped a frantic rhythm on the linoleum. Leo sat statue still, his phone lighting up repeatedly in his hand. He'd silence it, then it would buzz again. "This is a nightmare," Celia whispered for the third time. "My poor mother, how could this happen?" I placed a comforting, wrinkled hand on her arm. "Life is fragile, my dear. The doctors will find the cause." I let the silence stretch, then added, almost to myself, "Strange, though. She seemed fine until after that scotch. Drank it so fast." Celia's tapping ceased. The scotch?" "Oh, pay me no mind," I said with a weary wave, an old man seeing ghosts in the shadows. But the damage was done. A veneer of ice had formed over her panic. Leo was watching us, his eyes sharp. 3 hours later, a weary doctor informed us Judith was stable, but in a medically induced coma to allow her system to purge the toxin. "The source is unclear," he said, "but it was potent. We're testing everything from the party." "Can we see her?" Celia asked. "Immediate family only, and she's unconscious tomorrow." In the parking lot, Leo walked me to my car. "Dad," he began, his voice thick with false concern. "Come stay with us tonight. The house will feel empty. After this, I'd worry about you being alone." The invitation was a cage. I could see it in his eyes. Isolate the target, regroup, assess what the old man knew. "Your concern touches me, son. But I have the alarm system, remember? The one you insisted I install after the break-in last year. A break-in that had, curiously, stolen nothing." I drove home, watching in the rear view as their silhouettes converged in a heated, gesturing argument under the sodium lights. Home. I poured a fresh glass of scotch from a new sealed bottle and retreated to my study. The house, a testament to my life's work, felt different. The shadows held new shapes. The question wasn't what, but why. The $31 million question. I spent the night not sleeping, but conducting an audit of my own family. By dawn, with a pot of black coffee and a legal pad, the ugly picture emerged. Leo's innovative tech startup was a money pit, propped up by loans I'd co-signed. Celia's interior design firm was a front for her staggering personal spending. Their waterfront loft, their Tesla and Porsche, their 6-figure membership at the Cliffside Club, all fueled by a river of debt that was about to run dry. I'd been the dam, holding it back. Investments, I'd called the transfers, a bridge loan for the loft, seed money for the doomed startup, nearly $350,000 over 4 years. Never a gift, always a transaction framed as belief in their potential. Now I saw it for what it was, a down payment on an inheritance they'd grown too impatient to wait for. The call came at 8:15 a.m. Celia, her voice syrupy with concern. Arthur, I'm just sick about last night. Mother's stable, thank God. The doctors think, well, they suspect she might have accidentally taken too much of her heart medication. She's so forgetful. Judith Templeton was many things, vain, gossipy, superficial, but forgetful about her health. The woman tracked her vitamins and blood pressure with military precision. How fortunate it wasn't something at the party, I said, letting the sentence hang. Oh, absolutely not, she said too quickly. The doctor said it was definitely an internal issue. Nothing to do with your beautiful event. Of course, shut down any line of inquiry that led back to my home, my whiskey cart. After hanging up, I stared at the half-empty bottle of Macallan 30 on my bar. A silent witness, evidence if I chose to use it. My doorbell chimed at 9:30. Leo stood there with a bag of still warm croissants, the epitome of the devoted son. Thought you shouldn't be alone with your thoughts, he said. As he moved through my kitchen, with a familiarity that now felt invasive, a profound sadness washed over me. This was the boy I taught to sail, whose science projects I glued together. When had he become this stranger calculating my worth in years remaining? We're worried about you, Dad, he began over coffee. This big house, the stairs, the pool, all that capital from the sale just sitting, it makes you a target. At your age, at my age, I'm sharper than most men, half of it, I replied, but he plowed on. Celia found this incredible place, the residences at Silver Point. Assisted living, but like a 5-star resort. Golf, concierge medicine, chef-prepared meals. There's a wait list, but for a significant entry fee, $750,000, a suite could be available next month. $750,000. A massive liquid chunk of my recent sale. And once I was safely tucked away in a gilded cage, who would hold the power of attorney? Who would manage the remaining millions? It sounds like a very elegant prison, Leo. It's security, Dad. What if you'd been the one to collapse last night, alone here? But I wasn't, I said softly. Judith was. He left frustrated, but with my promise to think about it. The script was clear. Manufacture a crisis, propose the solution, gain control. After he was gone, I called the only man I trusted, my attorney, Benjamin Croft. In his wood-paneled office an hour later, I laid out the entire sordid tale. You have no tangible proof, Arthur, Ben said, steepling his fingers. Without the contents of that bottle tested by an independent lab, it's your word against theirs. And the life insurance policy. Life insurance? Ben slid a document across the desk. A policy taken out by Celia 6 months prior. A $2 million payout on my death. Beneficiary, Leo Vance. Insurable interest as your primary caregiver, Ben said dryly. A cold fury settled in my bones. This was premeditated, financial planning of the most grotesque kind. What do I do, Ben? We fortify, he said. First, a full competency evaluation with a neurologist I trust. We get your mental acuity on the record. Today. Then, we redesign your entire estate architecture. We make you a fortress. We worked until evening. Irrevocable trusts. A poison pill clause that would divert all assets to charity if anyone attempted to declare me incompetent. Updated healthcare directives naming Ben, not family, as my proxy. The new will left Leo a fixed, comfortable annual stipend, and not a penny more. Celia was expressly excluded. And Arthur, Ben said as I left, you need to assume they will try again. The first attempt failed. The next will be more subtle. Perhaps an accident in your home or a sudden dementia that requires them to move in. I drove home, the setting sun painting the ocean in blood-orange hues. The game was set. Now I had to flip the board. The next phase required bait. I called Leo. I've been considering Silver Point, I said, letting a tremor of vulnerability enter my voice. This incident with Judith has shaken me. Perhaps you and Celia could help me with the paperwork? His eagerness was palpable. They arrived the following morning with a portfolio of brochures and contracts. As Celia gushed about spa treatments and lecture series, I signed the admission forms, doctored versions Ben had prepared, binding only to a fictitious shell company. "There's just the matter of the power of attorney," Leo said, sliding the critical document toward me. "The facility requires it, for your protection." I read the sweeping language. It would grant him immediate and total control over every account, every asset. I signed it with a flourish, another of Ben's expertly forged decoys, granting authority over an empty offshore account. I watched their faces, the barely concealed triumph. They thought they had won. "There is one last thing," I said. "My security system. I'll need to transfer the codes and monitoring service to you when I move. The technician is coming tomorrow to update everything. Perhaps you could be here?" The hook was set. They agreed instantly, but before they could leave, my doorbell rang. On my porch stood Detective Marquez and a uniformed officer. "Mr. Vance, we need to speak with you regarding the poisoning of Judith Templeton." Leo froze. "Poisoning? The doctor said—" The full talk screen came back. Marquez interrupted, her gaze steady. "Digitalis glycosides, concentrated. In the specific bottle of scotch served to you, Mr. Vance." She turned to me. "And we found this in a search of your son's home office." She held up an evidence bag containing a small, amber bottle labeled foxglove tincture, botanical extract. Celia made a sound like a wounded animal. Leo's face was a mask of sheer panic. "That's not mine. It's a plant." "Is it?" I asked quietly. I turned to the detective. "I believe my daughter-in-law recently took out a substantial life insurance policy on me. And my son has been making payments to a Dr. Alban, a psychiatrist known for providing favorable competency evaluations for a fee." The unraveling was swift and brutal. The hidden debts, the emails between Leo and Dr. Alban discussing managing Arthur's transition, the insurance policy, it all formed a damning mosaic. As Detective Marquez read Celia her rights, Leo turned to me, his eyes wide with a betrayal that took my breath away. You set this up, the paperwork, the security guy. You knew." "I protected myself," I said, my voice cold. "You planned to kill me, Leo, or lock me away and steal everything I've built. Your only mistake was being sloppy with the poison and underestimating the old man." In the stunned silence that followed their arrest, the true cost settled upon me. Not the financial cost, but the hollow victory of outliving my own child's morality. 3 months later, the verdicts are in. Celia, convicted of attempted murder, faces 20 years. Leo, on conspiracy and fraud charges, took a plea for 7. The world knows the story of the wealthy patriarch and his avaricious heirs. I sit on my terrace, the same flagstones where Judith fell. She recovered fully, and in a twist of fate, has become a fierce advocate against elder financial abuse. We have lunch weekly. My granddaughter Sophie calls. She's 19 at college. She's changed her last name, disavowing her parents. "I'm so sorry, Grandpa," she whispers, and I hear the tears. "I didn't know." "You have nothing to be sorry for," I tell her, and I mean it. Your path is your own. Benjamin Croft stops by with final paperwork. The trusts are airtight. My wealth will eventually fund scholarships for underprivileged students studying ethics in business. Leo's stipend will be paid, but only if he completes a rehabilitation program. It's more than he deserves. The roses climbing my garden wall are in full defiant bloom. I had the landscaper plant more. Foxgloves, ironically, are now banned from the property. I think often of that moment, the glass, the seizure, the terrible clarity. I didn't just survive a poisoning, I survived the ultimate betrayal. And in doing so, I reclaimed the narrative of my own life. At 72, I am not a relic to be managed or a vault to be cracked. I am the architect. And this, the peace I've built from the rubble of their greed, is my final and greatest project. So, to anyone watching who thinks age equals weakness or that family is a guarantee of loyalty, think again. Protect yourself, document everything, and never, ever underestimate the will of someone who has everything left to lose. The silence after the verdicts was a physical thing. It settled into the high ceilings of my home, thick and heavy as the dust on a forgotten shelf. I had won. The fortress stood. But a victory that leaves your family in ruins is a hollow kingdom to rule. I tried to reclaim routines, morning coffee on the terrace, the financial papers, a walk along the cliff path. But my eyes kept straying to the whiskey cart, now permanently cleared of bottles. I'd hear a creak on the staircase, and for a split second, my heart would clench, expecting Leo's voice. It was never Leo. It was just the old house settling, or my own guilt shifting its weight. Benjamin Croft called it survivor's adjustment. Helen Peterson, Judith's sister who'd become an unexpected confidant, called it the bill coming due. She'd come over twice a week, bringing terrible casseroles and blunt wisdom. You sent your boy to prison, Arthur. Don't expect to sleep like a baby. You did what you had to, but it's going to cost you in dreams. The first invoice came from the state, a formal notice regarding the seizure of Leo and Celia's assets to pay restitution and legal fees. Their loft, the cars, the obscene artwork, all to be liquidated. Attached was a request. Did I wish to bid on any items to keep them in the family? I tossed the letter into the fire, let it all burn. The second invoice was more subtle, a letter from Leo, forwarded by his lawyer. It was short, typed, and utterly devoid of the son I knew. Dad, I've been assigned to the library detail. I have time to think. I think about the sailboat, the windswept. You always said the sea didn't forgive errors in judgment. I understand that now. Celia's in the women's facility upstate. She blames you for everything. I don't. I made my choices, Sophie wrote. She says she's changing her name. Can't say I blame her either. I am not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I am asking, if it's not too much, for you to send me some books. History, philosophy, something to help me understand what I became. Leo, I read it a dozen times. The clinical tone, the reference to the boat, a memory I'd cherished, now weaponized as a metaphor for his own failure. The easy throw of Celia under the bus, and the request. Not for money, not for a lawyer, for books. The cleverest manipulation of all, appealing to the intellectual father, not the emotional one. I didn't reply. But that night, I went into the library, my sanctuary. I ran my fingers over the leather-bound spines, Gibbon's Decline and Fall, Plato's Republic, Machiavelli's The Prince. What book could explain his choices? Perhaps they all could. I didn't send them. Sending them felt like engagement, like the first thread of a rope bridge across a canyon I had no intention of crossing. The silence I maintained was my new security system. The call came from a young lawyer named Anya Desai. Mr. Vance, I represent the interests of your granddaughter, Sophie Vance. She wishes to formally and permanently sever all legal and financial ties to her parents, Leo and Celia Vance. She also wishes to renounce any future claim to your estate. I was stunned. She's doing what? Why? She believes it's a matter of principle. She wants to build a life entirely separate from recent events. She asked me to assure you this is not a punitive gesture toward you, but a cleansing one for herself. Where is she? She's here in my office. Would you like to speak with her? There was a rustling, then her voice, older and steadier than I remembered. Hi, Grandpa. Sophie, this is drastic. It's necessary, she said, and I heard the iron in her, an iron I didn't know she possessed. I can't have their shadow on me. Every opportunity, every kindness would be questioned. Is it because of who her parents are? Is it guilt money from Arthur Vance? I need my name and my future to be my own. You have your trust fund from me. It's not connected to... I know, and I'm grateful, but I'm not touching it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I'm working 2 jobs to put myself through school. I'm studying social work, did you know? I want to help families before they get to this point. I felt a surge of emotion so powerful it threatened to buckle my knees. Pride, grief, awe. In the wreckage her parents created, she was building something sturdy and honest from the ground up. She was, in that moment, the true heir to everything I'd ever valued. Resilience, integrity, self-reliance. Your parents are my parents, she cut in, her voice softening. I will probably someday visit him. For me, not for him. But their path is theirs. Mine is mine. This legal step makes that irrevocably clear. To the world and to myself. We talked a while longer about her classes, her apartment, her friends who knew nothing of her family drama. She asked about my health, about the house, about Judith. Normal things. The conversation was a lifeline thrown across a chasm. After I hung up, I called Ben Croft. Draw up new papers. I want to create a dedicated foundation for scholarships in ethical business leadership. Name Sophie as the sole, irrevocable trustee. She can't access the principal for herself, but she controls where it goes. She decides who is worthy. Ben was quiet for a moment. Arthur, that's a tremendous responsibility for a young woman. She's already demonstrating more ethical leadership than her father ever did, I said. Let's give her the tools to cultivate more of it in the world. It was, I realized, the opposite of Leo's poison, not a taking, but a planting. The warden's call was a courtesy. Mr. Vance, your son has requested a visit. He's listed you as his only requested visitor for the next quarter. You are under no obligation. I hadn't seen him since the arraignment. The image in my mind was of the boy in the sailboat, not the man in the orange jumpsuit. Curiosity, that cold and clinical companion, got the better of me. Or perhaps it was the need to see the monster I had created, to look it in the eye and see if any of my son remained. The processing was dehumanizing for everyone. The clanging doors, the smell of industrial cleaner and despair, the plexiglass partition. When he was let in, I barely recognized him. He was thinner, his posture defeated, but his eyes, they were the same. Sharp, calculating, scanning me for weakness. We picked up the phones. You came, he said. You asked. Did you get my letter? I did. And the books? No. A flicker of irritation. Good. Let him feel a fraction of the powerlessness he'd tried to inflict on me. Why are you here, Leo? To see you. He looked down, then back up. To tell you I'm in a therapy group for cognitive restructuring. We talk about entitlement, narcissistic injury. Do you use those words or do they use them on you? He almost smiled. They use them on me, but I'm starting to see the shape of it, my sense of lack, how I came to believe your success was my deprivation. It was textbook, a rehearsed insight. But was there a kernel of truth beneath the therapy speak? Celia's appeal was denied, he said, changing tack. I heard. She says you bribed the judge. I laughed, a dry, hollow sound. She gives me far too much credit. Sophie changed her name. She did. To Sophie Keller, her mother's maiden name. He said it like an accusation. She's erasing me. She's saving herself. He leaned forward, his voice dropping, though no one could hear. Dad, listen. I know I can't fix this. But 7 years? It's a long time. When I get out, I'll be starting from zero. No family, no name, no money. You've won. You've protected everything. Would there be a place? Not in the business, not money, just a job, a reference, something to keep me from drowning. It was the most human thing he'd said, a plea from the rubble, and it was the most dangerous request of all. It was the first thread of the rope bridge thrown from his side. "I'll consider it," I said, because it was the only safe answer, non-committal, a holding pattern. He nodded as if he'd expected nothing more. "Thank you for coming." As I drove away from the barbed wire and the guard towers, I felt more conflicted than ever. The monster had shown me a glimpse of the drowning man. My conscience, a muscle long atrophied by business, began to ache. The launch of the Vance Foundation for Ethical Leadership was a small, quiet affair. We held it at the university, not a hotel ballroom. Sophie stood at the podium, clear-eyed and poised. She didn't mention her parents, or me, or the source of the money. She spoke about the corrosive power of unexamined privilege and the need to build business practices on a foundation of moral courage. "This foundation," she said, her voice carrying easily in the hushed room, "will not just reward academic excellence. It will seek out and support students who have demonstrated through action a commitment to community, to integrity, and to lifting others as they climb. We're not just investing in future CEOs, we're investing in future guardians." I watched her from the front row, a fierce pride swelling in my chest. She was the phoenix. This was my legacy, far more than bricks and mortar or stock portfolios. Afterwards, at a simple reception, she found me by the refreshment table. "You're quiet," she said. "I'm observing the chief trustee. She's impressive." She nudged me with her shoulder, a girlish gesture that belied her professional demeanor. I had a good model, for the tough parts anyway. "What about the other parts?" I asked, the question hanging between us. "I'm building those myself," she said softly, "with friends, with this work." She looked at me. "You could help, you know, not with money, with time. Some of these applicants, they've overcome things. They could use a mentor who's seen a few battles." It was an offer of redemption, not for my sins, but for my solitude. A way to use my hard-won, bitter wisdom for something good. "I'd like that," I said, and meant it. Later that night, Benjamin Croft called. "The papers from Leo's lawyer came. The formal request for you to be part of his parole planning committee in 5 years, and a separate, more personal request for a character reference when the time comes." The two worlds collided, the bright, clean future with Sophie and the tangled, murky past with Leo. "What's your advice, Ben?" "As your lawyer, maintain distance. Any engagement is a liability. As your friend?" He sighed. "He's still your son, Arthur. The law has punished him. The question is whether your conscience requires life without parole." I had no answer. I sat in my study, between the portrait of my younger family and the brochure for Sophie's foundation, trapped between the man I was and the man I might yet become. The first grant committee meeting was a revelation. Sophie had curated a diverse group, a young nonprofit director, a philosophy professor, a former public defender, and me. We reviewed applications, and Sophie was relentless, probing beyond grades and essays. "This one," she said, pointing to an application from a young man who'd started a cooperative to help farmers market directly to city communities. "His numbers are mediocre, but his references talk about how he stood down a corporate buyer trying to strong-arm his neighbors. That's the ethics in action we're looking for." I found myself engaged, arguing points, seeing the world through this new, hopeful lens. For 2 hours, the shadow of Leo and the quiet of the big house receded. It didn't last. I returned home to a blinking light on my Celia was in prison, but what about her family? Her brother had always been a shady character. Leo, from inside, could have shared the old layout. My newfound peace was fragile. The fortress had walls, but ghosts could walk through them. I made a decision. I called a man I'd used long ago for corporate due diligence, a discreet investigator named Silas. I need a deep background, I told him, on anyone connected to Celia, siblings, parents, close friends, any signs of resentment, financial trouble, unusual activity since the conviction. I was expanding the battlefield. The threat was no longer just inside the family, it was in its orbit. Silas's report arrived a week later. Celia's brother Marcus was a gambler with significant debts to unsavory people. Her mother had been quietly selling family jewelry. And a month ago, Marcus had made a cash purchase of a high-end drone for photography. A drone, capable of flying over walls, testing sensors, perhaps even delivering a small package. The threat was no longer theoretical. It was technological, and it was circling. I didn't go to the police. What would I say? My convicted daughter-in-law's brother bought a drone? Instead, I upgraded. Silas recommended a firm that specialized in counter-surveillance. They installed microwave motion detectors, drone detection radar around the perimeter, and frequency scanners. My home was becoming less a sanctuary and more a bunker. Helen Peterson came over and took one look at the new keypad by the door. Living well is the best revenge, Arthur, but this looks like you're preparing for a siege. I am, I said bluntly. She studied my face. The poison isn't just in the scotch, is it? It's in the air you breathe now. Distrust, fear. They've poisoned your peace of mind. That was always part of the plan, even if they failed at the rest. Her words struck a deep chord. They hadn't just wanted my money. They'd wanted me out of the way, by death or by institutionalization. Now, from prison, they were still achieving a version of that. They were turning my home into a prison of my own making. I was letting them win the long game. What do I do, Helen? Ignore a real threat? No, she said, but don't let it define you. You have a foundation to run. A granddaughter who needs a grandfather, not a fortress commander. Live so loudly and fully that their little drone and their petty schemes become background noise. It was the best advice I'd received. The next day, I had the security team install all their equipment, but I also called a landscape architect. I commissioned a new garden for the West Wing, a butterfly haven with a winding path and a small fountain. I would not let that part of my home be defined by a ghost alert. I also began writing, not a memoir, but a series of letters, to Sophie about her father as a boy. Security panel, a motion sensor alert in the West Wing, the unused guest suite. The system showed nothing on camera, a false alarm, likely a large moth or a fault. But the cold finger of fear traced my spine. It was the wing farthest from my bedroom. I called the security company. They promised to send someone in the morning. I spent the night with every light on, the antique fire poker from the hearth leaning against my armchair. Paranoia, yes. But paranoia had kept me alive. The technician found nothing. Could be a glitch in the sensor, Mr. Vance. We'll replace it. But the seed was planted. Was it a glitch? Or was it a test? Someone probing the system? To the foundation, outlining principles and hopes. To myself, clarifying my own thoughts. It was an act of creation to counter the destruction they'd wrought. The test came on a rainy Tuesday. The drone detection alarm blared, a small commercial device hovering 100 yards off the cliff edge just beyond my property line. The cameras zoomed in. It carried no visible payload. It just hovered, watching. Silas was on the line in minutes. It's registered to a shell company, untraceable. It's a probe, Arthur. Seeing your reaction time, your camera angles. What's the play? Could be reconnaissance for a later physical break-in. Could be intimidation. Could be Marcus trying to spook you into a reaction that makes you look unstable. Perfect for a future competency challenge from Leo. So that was it. The multi-front war. Legal, psychological, now technological. I followed Helen's advice. I did not cower. I had my caretaker set up a patio umbrella and a chair in full view of the drone's camera. I made a show of sitting there with a book and a cup of tea, giving a casual wave in its direction before ignoring it completely. I lived loudly. I called Sophie and had a laughing conversation about one of the scholarship applicants. After 20 minutes, the drone zipped away. I had passed the test. I had not shown fear. I had shown a man at ease in his domain, unshaken. The message was clear. Your tricks are small. My life is large. That evening, I took the final step. I called Benjamin Croft. File the papers. I will agree to be listed on Leo's parole planning committee, and I will write a character reference when the time comes. It will be an honest one. It will detail his crime, his betrayal, and his efforts at rehabilitation. It will not recommend early release, but it will not bar the door either. Are you sure, Arthur? This is a risk. It's a choice, I corrected. Fear has been making my choices for me. Now I'm making one from a place of strength. Let him see that living well, and with a measure of difficult grace, is what true power looks like. A year has passed since the party. The roses on the wall have bloomed twice. The Vance Keller Foundation has awarded its first 8 scholarships. Sophie Keller is graduating with honors, and she's accepted a job with a nonprofit that works with at-risk families. She has dinner with me every Sunday. We talk about her work, my garden, books, everything but the past. The past is a country we have both, by unspoken agreement, emigrated from. I received a second letter from Leo, shorter. Dad, I heard about the foundation, Sophie's work. I saw a picture in the paper. She looks like Mom, your mom. My group therapist says amends are about action, not words. I don't know what action is possible from here, but I am trying to understand the cost of what I did, to you and to her. Thank you for agreeing to be on the committee. I won't ask you for more. Leo. There was no request this time, just a statement, a recognition. It was progress of a painful sort. The drone never returned. Silas believes Marcus's creditors caught up with him. He's left the state. The immediate threat has receded. My security system sleeps, a silent guardian, but it no longer governs my days. This morning, I met with a young man, a finalist for the Foundation Scholarship. He wants to build affordable green housing. He asked me for advice. What's the one thing you wish you'd known at my age? He asked. I looked out at the ocean, vast and constant. I wish I'd known that the price of getting what you want is often paid in the currency of who you are. Guard your character more fiercely than your portfolio. Because in the end, your portfolio won't sit across from you at dinner. Your character will, and it will either be your best company or your lifelong ghost. He wrote it down. I am 73. My house is not just a fortress. It is also a home again, with Sophie's laughter in it. My legacy is not just a fortune protected, but a foundation planted. My son is in prison, and a part of my heart is there with him, and perhaps always will be. But I am no longer waiting for the next attack. I am too busy living. I tend my roses. I mentor the next generation. I have coffee with Helen. I remember the good years with my wife. The poison did not win. The greed did not win. I am here, I am awake, and I am, against all odds, at peace. The story isn't about the trap I avoided, but the life I built after. And that story is still being written. Thanks for watching. If you've stayed this long, you understand that some victories are quiet and some survivals are a daily, deliberate choice. Share your stories below. Your voice, your resilience matters. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. Share your own stories below. Sometimes, the most important lessons are whispered by those who have seen the darkest sides of those they loved.